Hello, welcome. Episode 5. Episode 5, we've returned for Road to the Draft. It's about time. I can hear you say it to yourself. Mike, where have you been? It's been weeks, but I'm back and I've got a friend with me this time. I've got Phil. I've dragged him into the podcast because we need to talk a little bit more about these draft prospects that are coming in April to the NFL, and it's going to be exciting. We're going to be doing mock drafts. I'm sure the guys, when they get on the flagship podcast, they'll be doing loads of mock drafts. I think Gail's been lined up for a future podcast as well, so there'll be a lot of content from now till the end of April, so strap yourselves in. This episode in particular, we're going to be looking a bit more, instead of the three prospects way of doing things that we've been doing so far, we're going to have a look at the prospects from a fantasy side of things, so a little bit of twist on it. So we'll look at some of the offensive weapons, not particularly players that the Eagles will probably be in a place to draft, but maybe if we're looking at some day two prospects. But so we'll look at some quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs. If we've got time, we'll touch on the tight ends as well. Phil, how the bloody hell are you? Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, I couldn't let you enjoy all the podcasting on your own, and you've been doing an absolutely stellar job whilst we've been having a very quiet period with the off season. But normally we'd be doing our main draft episodes and going for an hour and a half just talking absolute dribble because we don't have Mick to guide us through all the college prospects. So you've been doing the honourable thing and doing your road to the draft episodes, and they've been fantastic so far, especially for people like me who don't particularly start very early in our draft prep in terms of thinking what the Eagles might take, and also, as like you said with this episode, going down the fantasy route, which is probably more my area than the draft as a whole. I commission a couple of leagues. I know you've taken a step back from the fantasy side of things, but thought you might sort of still have a bit of knowledge to impart for me going into the fantasy drafts. But because we're all looking at the stellar players, and I'm just like, I have no idea if they're good or not. I need Mick to guide me and give me the information so that I can start planning my draft research, which is essentially going to be whatever you tell me to do. So
get an edge for your dynasty leagues, isn't it? Where you draft your rookies. So yeah. Have you got any high picks this year, Phil? Have you got?
Yeah, I've managed to secure the first overall pick in one league at least. So that's particularly probably where this has all come from. Is I've been given, I've managed to successfully tank a season, got the number one pick, and I'm just looking at the draft order going, Ashton Genty, I guess he's the one that Sleep was telling me to take, and I'm like, well, that's a really bad position to be in because, just going with whatever the consensus is. I know Mick was going to have a bit of a different take on it, so hopefully you can guide me.
Well, I'll try. You know how good I've been at fantasy the last few years. So I don't know if my opinion is really.
I've also got the bet that you told me to put on for Cam Ward to be the first pick off the board, which is looking very, 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 very interesting at the moment. It's almost not worth putting any money on him anymore, Mick. So
yeah, he's well odds on now.
Titans.
How much did you lay on that one, Phil?
I think it was only a tenner, but I think he was 9-1 at the time, so I think it's about 100 quid I'll get back if he gets picked first overall. So a nice little
I'm the same.
Coffers.
It's always the same when I put a bet on and then it looks like really likely to win or it does win. I'm like, why didn't I put more on?
Yeah, well,
why didn't I stick 15 or 20 on that? It seems so obvious at the time.
I should have done really, because the other bet that you suggested to us was the Heisman Trophy winner, which was obviously Travis Hunter in the end.
Yeah.
So a lot of us put a lot of money, not say a lot of money, but obviously I think he was about 17-18 to 1 at the time or something like that. So we all put a chunk of money on, and I did cash out, admittedly, but when he pretty much won it. But it was a case of winning 180 quid versus 220. I was like, I'm happy that I knew nothing about what I was placing the bet on. Mick's tip came good, and won a fair few people some money in our WhatsApp groups. And so when you said Cam Ward's going to be the number 1 overall, and he's 9-1, 8-1 at the moment, we were like, bang. Got no reason not to trust you at this point.
I just felt like I got lucky. Just so I know we're diverging a bit, but I remember I put Aidan Hutchinson on at a similar time to be the number 1 overall pick because he was so good for Michigan. He was so good, so
Jags
good.
screwed that one up, didn't they?
And then the Jags absolutely killed it. Like they ended up taking the boy from Georgia, the edge from Georgia. What's his name again? His name's gone from.
Yes, mine too. Yeah, he's not been too bad. He's just been re-signed, hasn't he?
He has. He's not a bad player, but
no Aidan Hutchinson, obviously.
He's no Aidan Hutchinson, in my opinion. But so yeah, let's get into it. Let's get into the episode. We're on a strict time budget here, so I'll just quickly go over the Eagles 2025 draft picks as I do at the start of every episode. A little bit of movement to report this time. So we have another 5th round pick, which was gained in the Kenny Pickett trade with the Cleveland Browns. So we sent Kenny Pickett and received DTR and a 5th round pick. So we now have 4 5th round picks as well as our first 4 round picks as well. So Howie's just collecting bullets for the chamber as draft day approaches to trade up or trade back and get even more picks. It looks like we've got a ton of picks between this draft in 2025 and next year in 2026. So for me, Phil, that's just ammo for Howie to replenish the squad because we lost quite a few guys in free agency, but also do a bit of trading.
It's kind of reminds me, Howie in this situation reminds me of when you play, if you play poker. I think you do. I know Liam does as well, and I played for a while, to be honest. Badly probably, but on the occasion that you are actually doing quite well and you've got all the chips, you play differently. You can be a bit bullish. You can bully teams. You get other players. So it always goes to me like I think Howie just likes to have this because it means that he can do what he wants. When you're low on chips, you're kind of restricted in how you can play. You're kind of fighting for your life. You're trying to be picky and choosy about when you go, when you don't, when you raise, when you fold, because you've got to watch the chips. But when you've got loads of chips at your table, you're like, yeah, screw it, call everything, and it all just ends up. It just has that effect that you end up sort of being really successful. And I think that's where Howie wants to be. He's got 20 odd picks in the next 2 years, all in the top 6 rounds or something like that. And I think this trade itself was it a 4th and 2 7ths or something, and Kenny Pickett, and we've got DTR and a 5th or something.
There's all sorts of
we sent back 2 7ths, and we. But it was almost like we actually just, we got Kenny Pickett, he played a season, but we've got a quarterback, which probably isn't going to come to much, but it's a solid depth piece, but we've ended up improving 2 7ths into a 5th round pick, I think is what it essentially worked out in the end. And it's sort of how he just is everything. He just wants to accumulate picks. And you could tell that was the off season when Howie was saying that, think there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable moves. And I think he was just preparing everyone, saying that my angle here is I'm getting as much capital I can so I can hit this draft and get everybody I want, not just some of who I want, everybody that he wants.
Absolutely. So I'm sure he will. He'll be on those phones on draft night, throwing 5ths at teams and
yeah, it'd just be random trades, and we'll be just reeling, going right. Howie's dealing. So
well, that was one of the things from last year, wasn't it? We kept trading back. We kept letting teams go ahead of us, and it was frustrating because there was players on the board that were looking at it like, "Howie, I really like that guy. Can you just take him instead of trading back? I don't want to miss out."
But that's also
yeah.
No, I was saying that he's also that he traded up and he got Cooper DeJean. I think he was just for the rest of the draft trying to recoup the capital he'd given up to get the top 2 guys on his board. He still managed to come away with Jalix Hunt, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and a couple other players that sort of still hanging around the periphery. So in Howie we trust as always.
Absolutely. So moving on, we've got some top 30 visits that have been happening between the combine and leading up to the draft. I mentioned on previous podcasts what a top 30 visit is, so I'm not going to cover all that again. But we do have names now. We've got names of players who's visited the building as they are slowly leaked from various sources across the Twitter sphere. Notably, Phil, or unsurprisingly, I should say, they're along the lines of scrimmage who are dominating these 30 visits so far. We have a number of tackles on the offensive line. We have a number of guards as well as 4 or 5 edge players who have popped up over the last couple of days. So Howie is obviously looking at these positions of need and these positions, that are valuable, need and value. I'll take you through some of the prospects that we've currently spoke to. Josh Connolly, the left tackle from Oregon. He's 6'5", 311 pounds. He is a 2-year starter as the Oregon Ducks left tackle. Earned first team All Big Ten honours in 2024. Only 9 pressures allowed in 2024, including 1 sack. He has great athletic traits and ran a 5.04 40-yard dash at the combine and a 34.5 vert. He'll maybe 21 years old at the start of his rookie season. He's a projected top 50 pick according to most draft analysts. This is a guy who would be looking at in the first round to take it 32 overall, maybe a trade back, but noting that the Chiefs are just ahead of us in the draft because, well, we know why. But they will probably be looking to replenish their O-line that got absolutely killed in Super Bowl 59. So maybe Josh Connolly is a trade-up option for the Eagles. I could see it if Howie likes him. If he gets in the building and Jeff Stoutland likes the look of him and Jeff Stoutland gives Howie the nod, that guy is going to be in green and white next year. Phil, what do you think about the position for tackle, taking a tackle high in this draft, or do you think it's something that we could probably wait in later rounds, knowing that we have Jeff Stoutland?
Well, yeah, those are two incredible points at the other opposite end of the scale. I think you'll probably be right in thinking that both have a high chance, but obviously it can only be one, and it's unlikely he's going to go both. If he goes really high, is he going to take that chance? If he goes in the first round, that he'll be taking some 6, 7, 8 round flyers just to sort of add depth and hopefully find the guy that actually is the diamond in the rough that can be coached up by Stoutland. But you're right. I think this draft is stacked at the defensive trenches side of the ball. I feel like it's with typically Howie to not go where everyone's going, because he knows he can pick up some players, and also he's kind of prioritized that side of the ball in terms of retaining the young players that we've drafted over the last couple of years. So Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter are obviously the future. Well, I say Jalen Carter definitely is. Jordan Davis is debatable right now, and across the edge in Nolan Smith, and you can argue maybe looking at Kobe Dean if he does come back from that pretty significant injury. But it feels to me like he's going to go offensive line because of something that PHLY raised the other day when I was listening to it quite a while ago now, because it doesn't feel that long ago, but saying that we've gone heavy on the defense in the first round for the last sort of 2-3 years, and that also indicates that when it comes to re-signing these players, if all these players hit, you've got a significant amount of outlay that you're going to have to spend on the defensive side of the ball, and you kind of don't want to then be left picking scraps and paying pennies for flyers on the offensive line to plug the gaps because you having to draft the offensive line because you don't need to draft on the defensive side of the ball. So I feel like with Lane Johnson coming back for another couple of years, Mailata is sort of pretty set, but there's been a bit of turnaround and we've lost Mekhi Becton in guard position. I feel like there's a good amount of talent, and as much as we rely on Stoutland to coach up these diamonds in the rough and Mailata and so on and so forth, that luck doesn't last forever, I guess. You can't rely on that. Sometimes you just have to draft that blue chip player who's going to come in and dominate for a decade and a half, like Lane Johnson's going to probably end up doing once he finishes hanging up his cleats alongside Brandon Graham. I think for me, it's a gut feeling that I can't shake. And I hadn't really thought about trading up either. I thought maybe they just see like who was around at 32, maybe drop back into the second round and pick up, um, the sort of second tier of talent. But to be honest, if you're making a case for like these, if there are enough blue chip players and they're hanging around in the 20s, I can see how we're moving up, and that's exactly what those fifth round picks, this year and next year will be handy in doing, just moving up a couple of spots at the end of the first round. It's not going to take as much as it would if at the top of the draft in the top 10 picks. So you can argue that Howie likes a player. Stoughton's like, this guy is going to be the next Lane Johnson, the next Jordan Mailata, guaranteed. Like there's everything to like about him. He's a blue chip player. Howie can do that because he knows he can still pick up. He's going to be. He's going to be picking up the defensive side of the ball much later in the draft. In the second round. So
yeah, it's interesting actually that you bring this up, because we did talk about this in the group chat maybe last week or the week before, and it was how, again, harking back to PHLY, but how many turkeys would you put on Howie trading up or trading back or staying pat at 32 overall? And I was more inclined that I've sort of flip-flopped my opinion on this. I thought we're definitely trading back, and then the more I've sat and thought about it, I think we've now got a good chance of trading up. Just like you said, if he's got an eye on a player that he really likes, he doesn't want to miss out on him, and we've got the assets to do it, to move up. So why not? And he's got previous history for this. He done it with Jalen Carter. Yeah, it was only one spot, but he still moved up. Done it with Devontae Smith. We traded back first, but he came back up for him. Cooper DeJean, who you mentioned earlier in the podcast as well, we traded up for him with Washington. Did we move up for Quinyon? No, we didn't. We stayed put for him. But Jordan Davis, we moved up a couple of spots for as well. So, I mean, he's known for doing these kind of things. So for me, I think he's going to move up.
I just think he hasn't spent any draft capital on the offensive line, any real draft capital. I mean, talking top 3 rounds for a good while now, or at least since Andre Dillard was a bit of a bust. Obviously, I'm aware that maybe that's in the back of his mind, going, top round talent for offensive lineman isn't any guarantees. But I feel like maybe
don't mention that name.
they've. It feels like, that being said, not wanting to make those mistakes over the last 3 years, it's pretty clear that Howie and the organization have learned a lot of lessons, and they've made significant improvements. You could say their successes have far outweighed their busts now over the last sort of half a decade or so. So I think that, like you said, they will. If the right player's there, they'll do their due diligence. But if the right player sat there in the 20s, drops into the 20s, definitely Howie will trade up, use a couple of later round draft picks and get his guy, and still pick up defensive line, safety positions, second and third round. I can just see that being, that's just my gut feeling. And as much as I think about it and I read articles and your articles and look at the table for the offensive line top 30 visits, it just reinforces that. So
exactly. And how he's doing that due diligence, he is looking at other prospects. So again, going back to the top 30 prospects that we've brought into the building so far, we've got Marcus Embo from Purdue, who's a right tackle / right guard. He probably projects more as a guard in the NFL, at least to begin with. He's projected around round 3, round 4. He's a relatively young guy. He's only 22 years old when the season will start. 2.5-year starter at Purdue as well. He did have a bit of an injury in 2023, but he returned in 2024 and played all games at right tackle for Purdue. Anthony Belton as well, so he's the left tackle for NC State, who's 6'6", 336 pounds. The 3-year starter at NC State. I think we put out some graphic about him with some knowledge. I'm going to do a bit of a write-up for all of these guys who are visiting the Eagles, and I'll let you know when that's available. But I'll just quickly go through these because time isn't really on our side. But Anthony Belton, left tackle, NC State, he's projected third round. Jalen Travis, another left tackle for Iowa State. He's a big boy. He's 6'8", 339 pounds. He's projected in the 5th or 6th round, so day 3 picks. So as I said, how he's looking up and down the spectrum, he's looking at the first round prospects, well, the end of the first round prospects. We're not trading up to get, the tackle from LSU, who's projected to be offensive tackle 1 off the board. But he's looking at all these other guys who could be valuable pickups in the later rounds of day 3. Donovan Jackson's another name. He's a guard for Ohio State, national champions. He will be projected roundabout in the first round, possibly mid-second round. Charles Grant, the offensive tackle for William and Mary. So that's quite a few. That's quite a few offensive linemen. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 offensive linemen that we've brought into the building from 30 visits. That's a 5th of the visits already gone to the offensive line. So it tells you how much they're valuing that position. From the other side of the ball, we've got a few edge prospects. We've had 4 that have been leaked out so far. We've had Izaraku from Boston College, the edge player, Elijah Roberts from SMU, Oladejo from UCLA, and Tyler Barron from Miami. Again, I'll do a bit of a write-up on all of these players. You can read about, or we'll possibly talk about in future episodes if some of them may pique our interests. But notably, on the edge side of things, I wouldn't say any of those players are round 1 quality. We're talking day 2 picks for most of them, and possibly heading into day 3 with those ones. Just to round out the 30 visits, we've also got Maxwell Hairston, the cornerback from Kentucky, who was the darling of the Combine because he can run fast. I'm not particularly enamoured with this player, but he has visited the building. The Eagles obviously like him, or want to see what he's all about. So we'll do a write-up about him as well. And then just to finish off, Jadon Blue, a running back from the University of Texas. Slightly surprised to see a running back coming into the building on a 30 visit. I don't know if that's just me or if that's maybe something you expected to fill, but came a bit of a shock to me, that one.
Well, I think there's still some uncertainty around the running back room. Kenny Gainwell's gone, so we've really only got Will Shipley and Saquon Barkley, and you can argue that that's enough. But there's always going to be a bit of due diligence, and I feel like the significance of we've got AJ Dillon in the room as well, but there's no certainties around him making the squad. So I guess you got to do due diligence. And I think at the end of the day, it might just be a curveball. It could be Howie just sort of going, what the Eagles are looking at a running back, just to throw a bit of a red herring in there. But I think at the same time, you're going to have Coach Singleton's going to be saying, hey, look, my running back room got you guys a Super Bowl. So I feel like I've earned some capital here in the team, and I want to sort of have a few top 30 visits for him to make sure he's got the continuity of the position behind the top 2 running backs, whether it's Shipley and Barkley or AJ Dillon versus Will Shipley down to number 3. But you got, I think it's the same with quarterbacks, really. I'll be surprised if they don't take someone just to sort of at the later rounds, just to have in the camp, just to see if you can get the next Tanner McKee, just to sit in the back. Why not have a running back from that you've scouted properly in the draft to sort of sit for a year while the guys sort of figure it out and then come in, so you don't then have to draft one when Saquon Barkley, touch wood, doesn't have a full season, or Shipley doesn't turn out to be as good as we saw the flashes that we saw this season. So I think it's probably irresponsible not to have at least just to focus solely on an edge and offensive line players or the trenches, because it makes it clear what you're going to be doing. So Howie wants to sort of keep the curtains up a little bit as well.
Yeah. Very good point, Phil. Very good point. That's why you're here, mate, to put me right and set me right. Right, we better move on to the fantasy football then, shall we? Phil, this is your area of expertise, the fantasy football. I know the prospects, but you know the game. You've kindly put some. Was that?
If you say so.
Yeah, well, you're better at fantasy than I am, believe me. So you've kindly put in some notes here as well. You've got Fran Duffy's big board for the offense and defense. I've put some names. We'll go through some quarterback prospects, some running backs, some wide receivers. We'll only take probably three, the top three or the top four. We could maybe talk about a sleeper as well, where you could target towards the end of these fantasy drafts. So just kick it off with the quarterbacks. Quarterbacks usually the most valuable position normally. Not in fantasy, it isn't, unless you're in a super flex. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
But the quarterbacks that are currently top of the board, as we mentioned at the start of the podcast, Cam Ward, University of Miami, who's projected to go first overall. All the bookies, all the betting sites have him to go first overall by quite a margin. Shadur Sanders is sitting around 9-1 at this current time. I've heard some draft analysts talk about Shadur falling out the first round or falling towards the end of the first round, which I think is ridiculous. That's how they've gone a complete opposite direction with Shadur. I still think he's going to be taken within the first few picks, the first 5 picks. I think he'll go. I don't think it'll be any less than that. Team placement is always very important for me. So, Phil, see from fantasy, how do you have many drafts who take the rookies? Oh, no, sorry, it wouldn't be redraft. It would be.
So you draw your rookie draft every year.
Yeah, you do. You'll have your rookie draft every year.
Yeah,
in your dynasties, but then you beat your redraft, and you sometimes take rookies, but normally you wouldn't quite focus.
Well, you have your. I think redrafts are harder with rookies because it's almost a bit like it's breaking the seal on the rookies because you don't know what you're going to get in the NFL with them, so it's always really hard to draft, do a redraft, and figure out when you're going to take the rookies because it's experience versus it's what you've got in your hand. So an older player that's experienced that always tends to perform, but is at the end of his career, is he going to fall off this season? In redraft, it's not so bad, so you can kind of take that chance because if it turns out to be a mistake, it's only going to be that season. But or if you're starting up a dynasty league, so obviously you have to draft that entire team at the start, so that might be slightly different where you're sort of looking for the future, but where rookies might go a little bit higher because you're trying to build a team for the future as well as now. But then you've got your rookie drafts for your leagues that have been going multiple years, and it's important because you're going into the league and it's hard to predict how things are going to go because you're taking into account team needs. So if you're going into if you've got a top 5 pick and your quarterback room is pretty dire, you've got Daniel Jones and you've got Russell Wilson as your top 2 quarterbacks, you're going to be thinking, holy crap, I need someone to come in. But with quarterbacks, it's obviously really difficult because the how it should operate is the Jordan Love / Jalen Hurts method, which is bringing him in before you really need him to sit behind a quarterback to get to know the system. Because the amount of quarterbacks we've seen, Bryce Young being the obvious example of most recent memory, although he had a good second half of the season. This season, it had deer in the headlights, absolutely terrible, getting benched for Andy Dalton. It's sort of not what you want to do. So you're looking at quarterbacks and the thing about the draft is obviously the quarterbacks are the most exciting position. So all the talk is about Cam Ward and how more amazing he looks, and Shadur Sanders, like where's he going to go? Because obviously you've got the whole Deion Sanders backroom sort of aspect to deal with as well. And you're kind of just looking for a player that is going to come in, might get some playing time, but it's difficult because that quarterbacks can just absolutely flop. The top 3 picks, Trey Lance. Look at what's happened to him.
Absolutely.
You come in, you can't go in looking for a player that's going to help you win. You've got to look for the future, and it's just so hard to look at it. If you've got the number 1 pick, go for Cam Ward. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you're playing the percentages there. There's a high chance, but you also want to be looking at players that are going to score you a lot of points quite straight away, and running backs and wide receivers will tend to do that starting into a new team. Does the team already have 3 wide receivers that are pretty established? Look at teams like Tampa Bay and Cincinnati with their wide receivers rooms, and you had Jalen McMillan and the guy who was basically just bombed at Cincinnati because he came in and decided that he just couldn't be asked and wasn't a team player. Jermaine Burton, came in. It's just so hard to pick it. So what I wanted to do with this hijack of your draft show is just sort of get your thoughts on from a college perspective, where these guys, like, are they the real deal? Is Cam Ward as good as they say? Is who would you comp him to in terms of quarterbacks that have gone high in the draft in recent years?
Yeah.
And same with the sort of wide receivers and running backs, is who's the guy who's going to come in? Do you think it can go to a team that's is in need of a running back, and is going to go hit the ground running, or someone who's going to sort of struggle to get into the team?
It can all be about landing spots, though. It's if we talk about, I hope none of your drafts are drafting before the actual NFL draft, because that's a cardinal sin. That is ridiculous. You can't be doing that, because players get hoisted into situations that are just bad. It's a bad situation. They're just not going to perform. If they're getting drafted by the Browns, I'm not taking them in my fantasy leagues. But no, Cam Ward's comp. It's funny that you mentioned Jordan Love, because I think he's very like Jordan Love, and Cam probably could do with a year to learn and sit. But if he's getting drafted number 1 overall by the Titans, which I think he will, he's going to be starting. He's going to be starting day one, and that it can knock a player's confidence to do that. But I think Cam Ward carries a certain amount of arrogance to him as well, so he'll relish the challenge as well. Like, transferring to Miami from Washington State last year was a big challenge for him, and I mean, he's rocketed up the draft boards from pre-season of the college season last year to now. He was nowhere near thought about being the number 1 overall pick. Everyone was saying it was going to be Quinn Ewers or Jalen Milroe, the quarterback from Texas and Alabama, respectively. And I mean, these guys are talking about being 3rd round picks now. So I like to see production on the field. It's all about production for me. And how many times, I couldn't count how many times, Miami were in a bad position. The defense was letting them down. Teams were coming back into games, and Cameron Ward, time and time again, would bail them out. And much to my dissatisfaction, because I absolutely can't stand the University of Miami, being a Notre Dame fan.
I think they did it to my beloved Virginia Tech as well, if I'm right.
They absolutely stole the game from Virginia Tech.
I say beloved, but we won't talk about how much I know about Virginia Tech.
But I mean, he was absolutely on fire. Like I said, he put the team on his back and carried the team. He had 4,300 pass yards last year, 336 rush yards as well. So he's a bit of I wouldn't say dual threat in the sense of your Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson type of thing, but he can move. He's not static in the pocket. He will roll out, and he can use his arms. He's got quite a good, strong arm. So I think he's worthy of the 1st overall pick. And if you're going to take a quarterback high in your NFL draft, I would probably be taking Cam Ward. As for Shedeur Sanders, again, we spoke about him a little. I don't think he's a end of the 1st round quarterback. He's not like a Kenny Pickett or one of these other guys. Who was it that went? Oh, it was the current Tennessee quarterback. What's his name? The male guy, Will Levis. He went at the start of the 2nd round. He's not that. He's definitely not that. He's getting a bit of hate, and I can't quite understand it, because like Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders came into Colorado and absolutely changed the program. It's because of who he is and who his dad is that people sort of hate on him. But I mean, he went to Jackson State. Jackson State are nobodies, and he went and changed that program around. And he done the same for Colorado. He nearly took them to the Big 12 championship, but they fell short towards the end. But
do you reckon it's something to do with is obviously the stuff behind the scenes with Deion Jackson? It seems like there's a heavy amount of control control or direction of where he wants to go, and they always talk about good quarterbacks go to bad teams just by the nature of the position, the draft, and what teams usually need in those positions. And could there be a bit of gamesmanship maybe to try and make him a little bit more fluid in where he might go, so that more teams are sort of getting into the ballpark and thinking, actually, we might have a chance at Shedeur here, and go into a team, quarterback needy team, sort of in the middle of the draft, you could say, you look at San Francisco with Brock Purdy, the uncertainty around paying him, and well, the Seahawks as well, around 18. They're not set a quarterback position either, and I don't think there's been nothing to support that. I'm just picking teams off the draft board to say, if you're sort of the 20, if you're in the mid to late 20s, and you think, well, we could do with a quarterback, but we don't have the draft capital nor the desire to sort of make a blockbuster trade and risk everything. If someone like Shedeur starts to fall, you're thinking, hey, we can maybe achieve this. So maybe they're trying to sort of not pigeonhole themselves into sort of like the top 5 picks. You don't want to be going to the Browns, the Giants, and the Patriots have got a quarterback, but you can say that the Jaguars are winning that, and the Raiders certainly could use a sort of a bit more sort of future proofing at the position. So I guess maybe you just try. I would say that would be the explanation. If you don't know why, then I'm not going to know why in terms of production and ability. But I'm always one for conspiracy theories and then trying to make players fall. As a Howieism as it is.
You've been spending too much time with Tony.
Yeah.
All the conspiracy theories.
Let's move on then. So outside of Shedeur, because that's all I've really heard and already know about, who would you say is the top prospect that's maybe a bit of a dark horse, so maybe going up the draft boards a bit, who will be like, once Shedeur and Cam Ward are off the board probably early in the first round like you expect, who's the next guy that we're going to be looking at?
The next guy I think is Jackson Dart, the quarterback from Ole Miss. He's again quite a young guy. I think he's only 21 years old at the moment. I think he'll be 22 at the start of the NFL season. So he's still really young. That's a guy you could probably sit for a year behind an established quarterback or a vet that you've maybe brought in, and he could learn a bit more and develop a bit more with a good coaching staff. But I think teams will be really interested in him because he's got a good arm, and I mean that's what most teams look for. He did impress at the combine. Impressed at his pro day as well. I think he's probably next in line for me. You've also got guys like Quinn Ewers, who I mentioned earlier from Texas. Expect him to be a bit later on in the. I mean, he could go second round, maybe third round. You can't tell with quarterbacks. Sometimes there's a premium put on them where teams will just take a quarterback because it's a quarterback. He didn't have the greatest seasons for Texas, even though they got all the way to the college football semi-finals, I think. Will Howard as well from Ohio State, but Taylor Shuck as well from Louisville, Jalen Milroe. These are all guys who will go within the first 2 days of the NFL draft. Would I take any of them in fantasy? Unless I'm picking really late, that's the only time I take him in fantasy. I would take a blower on a wide receiver or a running back before I would take some of these quarterbacks. But if you're going 1, 2, 3, Ward, Sanders, that.
Cool. All right. Well, we are sort of running out of time slightly, so we'll try and boost through maybe another couple positions before we finish out here. So let's go on to running back. No. I think it's good to have a chat because I'm learning stuff all the time, and I'm sure everyone listening is as well. So, do you want to do wide receivers or running backs to make sure we get that?
We'll do running backs. We'll do running backs quickly.
So talk to me about
everyone. Everyone knows about Gentry. Surely everyone knows. I don't have to say too much about Ashton Gentry. He was the guy who was rivaling Travis Hunter to be the Heisman winner. Probably why some people cashed out on that bet because they weren't sure if Gentry was actually going to win in the end, because he was fantastic in last year for Boise State. He ran that team. He destroyed the opposition. I mean, he was just wrecking games. He was racking up 200 yards a game and
who do you
3
think
touchdowns.
Will take
It was ridiculous.
Who do you think's likely to take? Because obviously running back's a little bit harder to pinpoint because people say don't take running backs in the first round, but as the Lions proved with Jahmyr Gibbs, taking him at 12 it was after Bijan Robinson was taken early, about 8. It's hard to look at a draft, but do you think someone's going to take? Well, surely someone's going to take him in the first round. But do you have an idea you think is more likely to take him?
I think it's possible. I think 3 teams. No, sorry, 2. I think 2. It will come down to 2 teams. I think it'll either be Chicago or Vegas. I think he'll go to one of those teams. don't think he'll fall any further than that in the draft. I'm trying to remember the order of the draft as it goes.
So Chicago picking at 10, and who was the other one you said?
Vegas.
Yeah, so Vegas take it at 6. So I suspect they probably won't take him at 6. But I guess if they miss out on top quarterback prospects, they might trade back later in the drafts potentially. But fair enough. Yeah, another top 10 either way. If Chicago or Raiders take him, then it would be top 10 unless they change position.
Yeah, I think if you're drafted high in your fantasy leagues, Jenny's either going to be 101 or 102, depending on how much you rate Travis Hunter. Other running backs, we've got Hampton as well from UNC. He's a big back. He's a bulldozer type back. Again, a fabulous player. I think he'll have quite a long career in the NFL. Looking at him I've seen him go as high as 20, like in the 20s in the first round. I've seen him fall into the second round as well. Teams don't usually rate running backs, but maybe that's changing because of Saquon Barkley. But I mean that Saquon's like a special talent, though. He's a special player. Is Hampton a special player in that sense? I don't see it. Yeah, but what did the Lions see in Jahmyr Gibbs, who everyone was saying was a second round pick, and they took him really high in the draft, and everyone went, Lions doing Lions things, and then turned out to be such an excellent player. But the same thing could possibly happen here with that, but personally, I don't really see it. I think he's a really good running back, but definitely quite a margin between him and Genty, I would think, between run back 1 and run back 2. I would say Hampton is closer to Henderson from OSU, from Ohio State. I think Hampton and Henderson are actually really close. Well, for me personally, if you were to take Henderson over Hampton, I'm fine with that. Henderson was a fantastic running back for Ohio State. Ohio State were 1 and 2 with Henderson and Judkins all year. They ran the ball, they ran it well, especially behind that offensive line that they had. So again, Henderson, Hampton, I could take them either way for me personally. I think fabulous players, and they'll definitely both go within the top 50 in the NFL draft. Another one who's sort of slipping is Cam Skattebo. It's Cam Skattebo, I should say. He's running back for Arizona State. He had a bit of a run in the college playoffs as well. Arizona State, they did really well. They won the Big 12. And I've
heard his name quite a bit, obviously, and his name's quite memorable. The only thing I can remember people saying about him is that he's not particularly fast and not particularly good between the lanes.
Yeah, it dings him a little bit. I mean, he's 23 years old as well, so he's a little bit older than the other guys. Like Judkins is 21 and Genty's 21. Some other guys are 22. But yeah, Cam Skattebo he's a bit of a he's quite elusive though. I think he's a really good player. He's such a home run hitter as well. I don't know how many times he just shook 3 for Arizona State and he was gone. He was in the end zone. I think he's been dinged a little bit too much for me in the media. They're talking about being a third round pick. I think he's still firmly in the second round. A team should probably be looking to picking him up. You're right though. He maybe doesn't have the speed, but he does have incredible contact balance. I think a big part of the run back's game is in contact balance, so they might not have to be the speediest, but I mean, if they can shake off a DB and stay on their feet, then I think that's worth more for me.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. I mean, I think those are the two main ones, definitely, for sure. Like with fantasy drafts that people want to know. I mean, with wide receivers, like I say, it's a little bit more. It depends on the room. There's a lot more position. There's not more places to get. So there's quite a higher chance of getting into the team or playing your wide receiver 3, getting some snaps, or if an injury happens, getting a chance to sort of play some more snaps. But with running back, it's very much kind of black and white. Is he good enough? Is he big? Is he strong? Is he fast? Is he good between the lanes? also, is he going somewhere that needs a running back? Because you quite often find that, outside of the top 2 running backs, they are just in for sort of like random plays, and you're not going to see much impact from. So it's good to sort of know. I think Hampton for me was the one I'm sort of quite excited with, because when I was listening to Fran Duffy, I think, talking about Hampton, the way he sort of, could you imagine Saquon Barkley, AJ Dillon, and Hampton in the same running back room? You'd just be like, I know it's a complete fantasy, and there's absolutely not a huge amount of logic to it, given that we've got Will Shipley and probably going to go much later in the draft. But just the idea that the thighs could solve world hunger, sort of meme comes back again. But I'm quite excited to see where they end up going, because it's, like I said, it's harder to predict, and they're more scattered and more random than the quarterbacks will be. You kind of can generally predict how many are going to go. But before we round out, then I guess, do you want to quickly touch on the wide receivers, or do you want to round it up there and maybe cover it another day?
We'll quickly run through. Yeah. I think the first rounders at least. So you've got your Travis Hunter, T-Mac, Luther Burden, Matthew Golden, Emeka Egbuka, I think are the main names that you'll have probably heard in the run up to the draft. And those 5 wide receivers who are projected to go probably first round. Although I have seen multiple times Burden and Egbuka falling out of the first round, with Travis Hunter and T-Mac going within the top 10. Travis Hunter, you already say that, Heisman winner, Colorado, absolutely killed it. He plays both sides of the ball, makes him so special as well. Will he play both sides of the ball at the next level in the NFL? I mean, that remains to be seen. And when he's asked about it, he always says that he's there to do special things, because he is a special player. So don't just put him in one position. Although, as we know, the NFL is a lot harder than college football is. So can he keep up with the snaps? If a team are going to be drafting this guy 2nd, 3rd, 4th overall, do they want him out there for that many snaps and risk sort of injury to their franchise wide receiver or franchise defensive back?
There's no risk time, is there?
No. So I think they may make him choose whether that's going to be receiver or defensive back. But as a pure wide receiver, Travis Hunter's a fantastic player. I don't really have to say a lot about him, because you won the Heisman, not just based on his snap count, which a lot of people sort of knocked him for. It's like, oh, just because he plays a lot of snaps, he won the Heisman. No, he won the Heisman because he had the most receiving yards out of any wide receiver in the Power 5. So that, for some reason, that gets totally missed out for whatever reason. But he's an absolute weapon. He's a yak weapon as well. Gets you plenty of yards after catch. He's going to be such a special player in the NFL. I can definitely see him. I can definitely see that. I would take him. I would take him 101 if I had the 101, because I think he's that good. But I get the reserve, because he could be played as a defensive back, and then you've spent that draft capital on nothing really. There's quite a bit of risk. There is a bit of risk. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a nervous drafter in that regard. I like exciting players, but there's something big like that big question mark over exactly how it will manifest itself for whichever team he ends up playing for. I think there's now strong calls for him going to the Giants, because the Giants have, definitely not solved their quarterback, but they've stocked it up a little bit so they can last another season. I suspect they're looking at more 2026 Archie Manning maybe. Style things. It seems like it's almost made to be for them. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But taking another weapon ready for when he comes into the league isn't necessarily a bad strategy. But yeah, I think maybe he ends up being sort of like they'll allow him to play both sides of the ball, but he'll have to pick one to be his specialist, and he'll be a depth piece. So it'll be like, if you're going to be wide receiver 1, you can only be cornerback. Linebacker, whatever. What is it he plays? Sorry, cornerback.
It's corner, yeah.
Corner. It was cornerback. I don't know why I doubted myself then. So he's cornerback 3, 4, 5. And he won't ever go into a starting slot. But if injuries take hold, then he's obviously a good depth piece to have in the back. I can see that being the logical way to try and maybe appease his desires to be this all special both sides of the ball guy. But you can't be the number one guy on both sides.
Yeah, but a guy who does play just the wide receiver position, Tetiora McMillan, also known as T-Mac. He's 6'4", 219. He's he's like the prototype X receiver. He's the guy that you feed the ball early and often. He's been comped to Drake London, and it's more because of his size than anything else. But he was again a fabulous player for Arizona over the course of the year. He had 8 total touchdowns, 1,300 yards. Again, I think he's clearly the best wide receiver in the draft behind Travis Hunter. Luther Burden would be my third choice for Missouri. Again, I've seen how he's another one. He's a true X receiver as well. But he's been knocked because of how bad Missouri were just this season gone. He's suffered from poor quarterback play. The year previous in 2023, he had a career year in 2023, and everyone thought he was going to carry that on in 2024. Unfortunately, not. And we had 676 receiving yards over the course of the season, which isn't great. Does not read great, but he does have that talent in him. Previous year he had 1,200 receiving yards, 9 total touchdowns that year. So he does have the production. It's just, possibly not when the quarterback play isn't up to snuff. Matthew Golden, the receiver from Texas, he's 5'11", 191. Again, he's another possession receiver. The comp I've seen from him is Chris Olave sort of type. I'm not in love with Matthew Golden. I think he would be more of a day 2 prospect for me. But there's a lot of love for him just now. I've seen, I think it might have been Daniel Jeremiah or someone that put him as wide receiver 1, and I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. I can't go on board with that at all. I think he's a good player. He can have a long career in the league at the right club. But I would still have those other guys drafted ahead of him. And finally, I'll just round this out with Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver from Ohio State, 6'1", 202 pounds. He's projected as a top 50 pick. I think he's worthy of a first round grade on him. Fantastic player at Ohio State. Ohio State just churns out these amazing wide receivers every single year. His comp, funnily enough, is JSN, who he played with at Ohio State, and he played with all these great receivers, but he's been overshadowed just now with their freshman wide receiver, who's possibly the best player in college football at the moment. So Egbuka maybe didn't get the service, but he's a team captain, he's a team player, he's possibly a slot receiver, maybe end up in the slot in the NFL at the next level, but he still racked up over 1,000 yards and 10 total touchdowns in that Ohio State offense as they worked their way to a national championship, and they couldn't have done it without Egbuka. So again, Egbuka would be my wide receiver 4. So I would put Hunter, T-Mac, Burden, Egbuka, then Golden. You're on mute.
I'm always like the sound of it, Egbuka. I think because of the Ohio State side of things, I'm always a bit of a bias. I'm thinking if it's a good team, it's a good player. It's sort of like I'm a very keep it simple, stupid guy. You know me. I don't like to overthink it, and I like to go with what feels right. Probably is right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always work, but it makes me happy when I get a player that I think is going to be good, even if it ends up being. I swear, the times when I've traded up in a draft, a fantasy draft, and I've picked players like Najee Harris, Marvin Harrison Jr., because I've wanted a taste of the good stuff, and they've not really done anything for me. So I think at the end of the day, if anyone asks me in my limited time, and if I have any sort of suggestions or tips, it's just draft who you want, because at the end of the day, if you draft a player that you like the look of, you'll enjoy watching him play. And if he doesn't work out, at least you went with someone that you had a bit of an affection for. If you pick someone you you kind of went with your head over your heart, and he ends up bombing. You hate yourself and you hate the player. It just ends up in a bad situation. But thanks for letting me hijack the last little bit of that, the Road to the Draft, episode 5, Mick. Before we run out, we'll just quickly touch on a few important things that happen around British and Irish Eagles. With the introduction of Philly Sports International, which is for those that have seen us on social media or in the WhatsApp groups, it's been a long project since last year between us, the UK Phillies, UK 76ers, Flyers, TBC, to create a more centralised location for us to operate all the Philly sports teams in the UK and abroad, Europe and beyond, worldwide fan bases that aren't in central Philadelphia with the saturation of media and information on your fingertips. We want to be a place where all the people that can't get to the games, sort of live further afield, can congregate, get the same benefits that we've been providing as the British and Irish Eagles, but combined with your specialists in Dave Shaw, UK Phillies, and Ben Glasspool, UK 76ers, to come together to sort of create a more Philly environment outside of Philadelphia for everyone. So that's what we've been working on. We're going to be releasing more and more over the coming days, so keep an eye on social medias, Philly Sports International, through our social media platforms and the Philly Sports International social media platform itself. There will be more coming out, and we'll get the information out to you as soon as it can. But we're really excited about this. It's going to be absolutely huge. We've put loads of work and effort into various platforms that are going to be getting released soon. And then once it goes live, we're going to be plugging the hell out of it, getting you guys to come on board. You won't regret it. It's going to be, if you've enjoyed being part of the British and Irish Eagles, it's going to be even better. It's hard to explain right now without limited details, but it's just going to be like that on steroids is the best way we can do it. UK Phillies Dave is hugely experienced in what he does, and what he's done with the UK Phillies fan base over the years is phenomenal. To get to partner up with that and cover more than just the Eagles, because I am a little bit into the Phillies, you're a little bit into the Flyers. We will have different sort of, we like to say we're people who are loyal to sports team. I'm loyal to all Philly sports teams, but to have a combination, an environment where all that comes together will allow me to sort of delve a bit deeper into those other areas, as well as showcase what we can do from the Eagles side. But it's going to be huge, so keep an eye on that. And aside from that, Mick, if you want to take us out, I'll let you take back control of your podcast.
No, thanks for that, Phil. I really appreciate you joining me today to get a sound off of for these draft podcasts. I know you, Liam, and Tony will have a lot of fun looking at some of these prospects running up to April. I'm just happy to give you a little taste of what's been going on in the world of the draft and in college, whilst everyone's still on a high from the Super Bowl win. But again, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me, Phil. We'll see you in the next one. Hopefully it won't be as long as the gap from the last one. Thanks for listening.
Go back.